This story happened years ago to a college student named Beatrice. It happened in a small apartment near her university where she lived alone. One night, she was washing her dishes when her phone rang. It was her friend, Peter, asking if she wanted to hang out. She said yes, and he told her he'd be over in 15 minutes. Beatrice decided to take a shower before Peter arrived, but just as she was shampooing her hair, she heard a loud knock on the door. She shouted for the person to come in, thinking that it was Peter, but the knocking started again. She stuck her head out of the shower and told the person to just let themselves in. That's when her phone rang again. It was Peter, but this time his voice was shaking and quiet. "Don't open the door," Peter warned. Beatrice was confused and asked, "Why not?" Peter told her that he was outside the apartment building and had just seen a strange woman crawling up the stairs on all fours. This story happened years ago to a student in Cebu when she was taking a summer course. This student stayed in a boarding house with 11 rooms, and her room was room number 10. At first, everything seemed normal, but then strange things started to happen. She would hear footsteps at night, and it sounded like someone was going into the room next door, room number 11. The student didn't think much of it at first. She thought that maybe someone was just staying in room 11, but then she started to hear other noises, like someone packing things into a plastic bag. One night, she even heard knocking on the wall, but separated her room from room 11. The student started to feel a little scared. She didn't know what was going on or who was making those noises, and then something even stranger happened. The student found out that her room was locked, even though she knew that she didn't leave it locked. She had to ask the caretaker of the boarding house for help to get back into her room. When they finally got in, they found that nothing had been touched, but the light was turned off. It was as if someone had been in her room, but she had no idea who or what it was. The weirdest part is when the caretaker revealed that the room 11 wasn't supposed to be rented. It's when the student realized that it might have been a ghost all this time. This story happened years ago to a young motorcycle rider named Alex who loved taking long rides at night. It was around 2 a.m. when he left Manila for a trip, feeling excited and a bit sleepy. As he rode through the dark highway, the only noise that could be heard was the sound of his motorcycle. Everything seemed fine, so he continued his journey. But as he rode through the mountains, the darkness started to feel overwhelming. He was alone on the road with no streetlights to guide him. Suddenly, his bike's throttle stopped working, and he was forced to stop in front of a cemetery. He was shocked and a bit scared, realizing that he was completely alone in the middle of the night. As he tried to fix his bike, he started to feel a creepy presence around him. He heard the child's laugh in the distance, and then his bike wouldn't start. He felt like he was being watched, and the laughter seemed to be getting closer. Suddenly, a small rock hit his helmet, and he heard the laughter again. He quickly started his bike and sped away. When he told the story to his friend told him that he might have forgotten to honk the horn before passing the cemetery as a sign of respect. So that's why the spirits played tricks on him. Since then, he never traveled on that highway at night again. This story happened years ago to Dre, who worked in an office building near a swimming pool. He would often take his breaks in the pantry where he could see the pool. One morning while he was eating, he noticed an old woman walking alone near the pool. She was wearing a pink dress and using a cane. He watched her, worried that she might fall into the water. As he kept watching, he saw her walk closer to the pool, and then suddenly she was gone. He thought that she had fallen into the water, and he rushed to tell his coworkers. They all ran to the pool area to help, but when they got there, everything seemed normal. The pool was calm, and there was no sign of the old woman. The guard didn't believe them at first, but then they looked at the security footage. What they saw was strange. The old woman had been seen near the pool, but it was an old recording from 2008. It turned out that an old woman had died in the pool many years ago. The guard thought that maybe the guy and his coworkers had seen her ghost. This story happened years ago to a nurse who worked at a hospital in San Diego. She had a friend who was also a nurse, and they were together on the night shift. Her friend was a very happy person who always wore a pink uniform and had a big smile on her face, but sadly she got sick and passed away. The nurse was very sad when her friend died, but then something strange happened. One night while the nurse was walking down the hospital hallway, she saw her friend sitting on a hospital bed in an empty room. She was wearing a pink uniform and had a big smile on her face, just like she always did. The nurse was shocked and called out her friend's name, but when she did, her friend disappeared. The nurse was confused and scared. She didn't know what to do, so she ran to the nurse's station and told her other coworkers what had happened. They were all surprised, but they also believed the nurse that she had really seen her friend's ghost. They thought that her friend's spirit was still with them, watching over them. This story happened years ago to a student who rented the room with friends for their internship. They were assigned to a hospital in a remote area, and so they rented a big house with several rooms. As the others left to go back to their province, she was left alone with one roommate. But then her roommate also left eventually, so she was left alone. Everything seemed normal until that one night. While she was in the middle of her sleep, she was shocked to hear a knock on the door at 3 a.m. She was very scared and tried to check under the door to see who it was, but there was no one there. The knocking continued, and the student was too scared to sleep, waiting for dawn to break so she could leave. The next morning, she asked the owner if he had knocked on the door last night, but the owner denied it. She was then left wondering about the mysterious person behind the knocking on the door, but was it really a person or a ghost? No one knows. This story happened years ago to a female teacher at the school where she had worked before. At first, everything seemed normal, but then weird things started to happen. A painting of a famous woman kept falling off the wall, and no one knew why. Her coworkers joked that it might be the work of a ghost, but she didn't believe it. One day, the teacher got frustrated and yelled at the supposed ghost, saying that it was being disrespectful. But then something even weirder happened. The clock on the wall started falling down, and it kept happening over and over again. The teacher was confused and a little scared. It wasn't until that she thought to a coworker that she found out about the truth. The school building used to be an old orphanage. Later on, one of her coworkers revealed that the school was one of the most haunted, and that's why all the strange things were happening. The teacher didn't know what to believe, but she knew one thing, that she needed to move to a new classroom next year. This story happened to a man named Sam at the Shannon Airport on April 15, 2001. His best friend had just passed away, so he and his girlfriend were ready for a flight back to America to pay their respects at his best friend's wake, but they were stuck there for the night. Sam was sitting alone on a bench, trying to process his emotions, when a little girl came and sat down beside him. She looked up at him with big eyes and asked, "Where did your friend go?" At first, Sam thought she was talking about his girlfriend, so he told her that she's at the counter getting tickets, but the little girl replied, she said, "No, the other boy that was sitting with you." Sam was confused as he didn't sit next to anyone. He asked the girl to describe the boy she was talking about, but then the little girl described his best friend in perfect detail. Sam was shocked and wondered how she knew what his friend looked like. He asked her, but she just raised her shoulders and said, "I guess he had to leave." Then she said goodbye and walked back to her family. Sam was left sitting there, feeling a mix of sadness and wonder. This story happened years ago to a female student after a prayer service in their school. The student was walking down the stairs during break, and everything seemed okay. But when she came back, she saw something that made her very surprised. In front of a storage room, she saw a girl standing in the middle of the room. She was surrounded by trash and old boxes, and she was wearing a black dress. Her hair was long and it was covering her face. The student was so shocked that she just stood there, not knowing what to do. After a few moments, she slowly walked away. But she was very curious, so she took another look. This time, the girl's hair was standing up, and the student felt very scared. Even though her knees were shaking, she tried to run away as quickly as she could. Finally, she made it back to her classroom, shaking and breathing hard. From then on, she always made sure to have someone with her whenever she went up the stairs. This story happened years ago to a girl who went on a trip with their boyfriend's family to a resort in Pangasinan, Philippines. They were excited to spend time together and have some fun, but things changed when they arrived at their resort. The staff told them that they needed to get an extra room because there were too many of them. They agreed and got another room, but things started to feel weird. The girl, her boyfriend, and 2 of his brothers stayed in the new room. They went to bed but were woken up by a ringing phone. At first, they thought it was just a wrong number, but the phone kept ringing and they started to feel scared. They answered the phone, but no one was on the line. They tried to go back to sleep, but the phone rang again and again. They didn't know what to do. They were trapped in the room with no way to stop the phone from ringing. The ringing seemed to be coming from everywhere, even from the floor below where there was no one staying. The next morning, the ringing stopped and they finally got out of the room and joined the rest of the family. When they checked out, they asked the staff about the mysterious calls, but the staff said they didn't make any calls. The girl and her boyfriend's family were then left wondering, if it wasn't the staff, then who was it?